On episode 256 of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we bring back Maria Emmerich and discuss her new cookbook, Keto Comfort Foods. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/256. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Before we get started today, I wanted to take a moment to invite you to join us for the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast Step Challenge for June. We're going to use an app called StrideKick, and basically what that'll allow us to do is we can track each other's steps. We're going to try to see how many days in a row, hopefully for the entire month of June, that you can meet the 10,000 step per day challenge. If you want to do this, though, because the way this thing's structured, I have to sign you up on the day of the challenge starting. So I'll send out an email on June 1st, anyone on the waiting list for the challenge. And you can get on that waiting list by going to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/step. And just go ahead and fill in that form right there. And what that'll do is give me your email address. So on June 1st, I can send you an email with the sign up information. Now, the StrideKick is an app that you'll carry on your phone, and you can also connect it to your Garmin. Also, I think it also works with a Fitbit. And so once it's connected there, it's tracking your steps either using your phone or using one of those other devices. And the application helps you keep up with the strides you have that day to allow you to make sure that you're meeting the 10,000 step per day goal. But again, it's an app, and so it's not something I control. So the only way I can get you on there is if you get on the waiting list. So if you go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/step, that'll give you the sign-up form. Now, once you get to the sign-up form and you fill it out, that's going to send you an email. You have to click confirm on that email, or I will not be able to send you the invite on June 1st. So make sure you confirm your email. Sometimes those go into your promotion or spam folder, particularly for anyone with a Yahoo address. I'm finding that they're having more problems than most others. But make sure you check to make sure that this didn't go into your spam folder or promotions folder, so you can go ahead and make sure that you're on the list, and I can invite you on June 1st. Now, our guest today, I've had on before on episode 203, and she writes cookbooks, and the recipes in her cookbooks are awesome, but the information that she puts in the cookbooks is really just as good. So it's almost like getting a good fitness or health book along with getting great recipes. And the recipe book that she has today that we're going to talk about is called Keto Comfort Foods, and let me tell you, it's amazing. The recipes in that book are just so cool because it's foods that I never thought I was going to be able to eat while I was still in ketosis. And I like to cycle in and out of ketosis, but the main reasons I like to cycle in and out of ketosis is so I can eat some of those types of foods. So now I'm going to have a way that I can eat nachos, chicken wings, and etouffee all without going out of ketosis. So I'm pretty stoked about that, and really stoked to have our best-selling author on today. Her name is Maria Emmerich. And before I get her on, I did want to say one more thing. After I got off the call with Maria, she did something really cool, and she wants to have a contest. She's going to give away one copy of her Keto Comfort Foods book, cookbook. And so if you want the cookbook and want to win the cookbook, listen to the end, and I'll give you the details on exactly how you can enter this contest. But with no further ado, here's Maria Emmerich. So Maria, welcome back to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you so much for having me again. It's an honor to be here.
You know, when I got your book, Keto Comfort Foods, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I tried the etouffee. I didn't read it. I just went ahead and flipped, and I found etouffee. And I'm like, oh my God, this is why I cycle on and off of keto, is because the foods that I love, none of them are keto. You know, so the etouffee and nachos and cheddar biscuits. I mean, what?
I know.
And I was like, So I tried the etouffee, and I actually posted a picture. My wife was traveling, and I posted a picture, and she's like, "You never cook like that when I'm home." And I would, she just happened to not be home, and the recipe was just wonderful, and it looked great, and it was beautiful, and it was awesome, and it was actually as good, if not better, than any etouffee I've ever eaten.
That really warms my heart. But I've gotten many comments, and especially ones from New Orleans, who say that I gave this to my grandmother, and she couldn't believe that this was not a traditional, that was not her recipe, that it was really that good. And things like that, like, really fuel my fire and keep me going.
Yeah. So this book has literally changed my life.
Oh, thank you.
So now, and another thing you really did in the book that I enjoyed was you dressed it up, and so you're sharing not only your recipes and your kind of some of your food tips and things you feel about food and some of your history of food. You're sharing pictures of your boys and yourself, and your kids are adorable.
Oh,
and,
thanks.
No, it really did. And you talked about in the book how when it's when your kid's going to eat, he really lights up. And he's not lighting up because he's going to get a sugar fix. He's lighting up because he's going to get really good nutrition that's going to taste great. And that's what comfort foods do. So could you kind of go into kind of the value of comfort foods?
Well, that's the thing. We're often told that, food is for energy and it should be nothing else. And it's, wrong to see food as pleasure or anything. But even, what I wrote was my son was 2.5. And they would start like dancing around in their seat and getting all excited. And when dinner time came, and I have little videos of them saying "num num" and stuff like that. And it's not wrong. I mean, it's embedded in us when we're just little children that we get excited around food. And yeah, I wrote that he wasn't getting chicken nuggets or anything, junky, even though there is a keto chicken nugget in there. But he was getting foods that were nourishing to him, and how foods that are nourishing can and should excite us. And so it's my passion to make food that tastes good and that we get excited about, and yet it's healthy,
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things when I kind of got into this is, a lot of people are saying, I want to cut my sugars. And they just really kind of don't have that path. And it's not that they want to go keto, but it's just that they recognize that, when you see a recipe for most foods, they're going to say, add sugar or the bleached flour or this or that.
Yeah.
And this has none of that. You do use a little bit of honey and some of the artificial. Oh, no, it's not artificial sweeteners. Okay, and I want to get into that.
Well, I guess I call them alternative sweeteners, but because they do come from nature, so I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I agree. It's kind of one of those. It's really hard, and that's why I want to get into it, because I want to wrap my head around that whole thing, because they are actually not unnatural. They're natural sweeteners. Yeah. But they're just.
And they're just ones that aren't going to affect your blood sugar. And that's why, working with type 1 and type 2 diabetics, knowing which ones are going to, change your blood sugar or, keeping us in, ketosis, if that's your goal or whatever it is. You really do have to be a detective on what you're choosing, because you're going to go to the grocery store and see stevia in the raw, for example. But the first ingredient there is maltodextrin, which is derived from corn, and that will affect your blood sugar. So you have to be a detective, because you think, well, Maria said stevia is good. Well, you have to know which types you're using. And so I make that very clear on what kinds I like.
Okay, so let's just stick with this topic for now. We'll jump back.
Sure.
So when we start talking about these different sweeteners, because you listed a whole series of them that I was like complete. I mean, I'd heard of monk fruit, or and I'd heard of stevia, but there were a whole series of these that you had in there that I was just not really familiar with. Can you kind of get into them? And I think you talked a little bit about mixing them to kind of get the right sweetness for yourself and less bitter and whatnot.
Right. A lot of people have tried stevia, and they're like, no, too bitter for me. And some people are super tasters. There's a rare population that are super tasters, and they're the ones that usually don't like that bitter aftertaste. And that's why, and I love food, and I want to make sure it tastes good. So I use something called stevia glycerite, which a lot of people haven't heard of. You can find this at any health food store, and it's it reminds me of a honey. It's so thick, and a little bit goes a long way. So, if you're wanting to do like a half a cup of sweetener, you'd only need about a teaspoon of that in your whatever you're making. And so a little bit goes a long way. So if you're thinking, oh, it's kind of pricey, it does last me months when I get a bottle. And that is primarily something that we like to use. If you, a lot of times you need bulk when you're baking things, and that's where the erythritol comes from. And again, that comes from, like fermented, whether it be mushrooms or other fruits, but it's a non-caloric sweetener that comes from nature. And then blending those usually provides the best flavor that reminds you of, your sugary sweets without that blood sugar spike.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the key is that, a lot of people really say they miss their sweets when they get into ketosis. And honest truth, me, because I don't have sweets very often, a strawberry, if I decide I'm going to have a little bit of berries, is just the most delicious thing in the world because I've got my sweets back. I got my taste back.
Yeah, and even some people have said when they bite into an almond after not having sweets, they even can taste that sweetness of the almond, or things that never even tasted sweet in the past now do, because we've just gotten our palate readjusted. Because I work with a lot of people. I had these clients specifically, they were staying in the United States. They're from Italy, and they said, man, Maria, I cannot wait to get back to Europe because everything is so sweet here. I cannot find a marinara sauce that's not clawingly sweet. And it's so funny because I grew up on Prego. Yeah. Prego, that spaghetti sauce. And first of all, it never goes bad in the fridge. It, never seems to get moldy. But second of all, it is very sweet. And if you look at that, most of the time, the things that we're buying have so much sugar in it that we don't even notice until we step back and get rid of that sugary taste.
Yeah, and so I think that's one of the things is your taste buds kind of change. You'll use less and less of these natural sweeteners to find that right thing. But this is an opportunity for you to when you have to carry something in for a potluck, this is an opportunity for you to trick them into eating something that's actually not going to spike their blood sugar, but still tastes just as good.
Yes, and I love doing that. I love bringing desserts to different gatherings so people can try them, and then I don't feel like I'm missing out either. If there's a whole buffet table full of desserts, I know that there's something that my family and I can enjoy and feel like we're partaking in the event.
Yeah. So now you get into good fats and bad fats, and I've covered this before, but I think it's always worth coming back and having this conversation because to me it's a complex topic that's easy to forget. So can we kind of go through what you mean by good fats and bad fats?
Well, surprisingly, I think one of the most important fats that we are ignoring are saturated fats, and we're told that that's a demonized fat. But when you look at the sheath of our bones, they're primarily made up of fat, and not just any fat. They're primarily made up of saturated fat, the fats that our great-grandparents grew up with. And they would, I don't know if you remember, when I was a little kid, we had a coffee cup of this gross, hard stuff, and it was lard that my mom would render, and she'd store that in the fridge. And when it was my job to clean out the fridge, I always wanted to throw it away, and she'd, don't you dare throw that away. And that's, what's interesting, now she doesn't do that. She doesn't have that anymore because we're told to stay away from it. And it's the exact stuff that is fueling our bodies properly. Saturated fat and cholesterol is what makes our healthy hormones. So much so that when you look at the breast milk, that's primarily made up of cholesterol and saturated fat, and that's because it's building the baby's healthy hormones and thyroid and all of that they need to have a healthy, to grow a healthy baby.
Yeah, for me, my grandmother had the coffee can, that she would do that, save the bacon grease and whatnot, and then my mother did that up, I would say probably right up until about the 70s when they started this whole thing. And yeah.
Yeah, and it's really kind of sad because those are some of those great fats that make food taste so lovely and good. But now we're switching to these harmful vegetable oils. It's almost impossible to find a salad dressing even in the refrigerated area of your grocery store that's not filled with canola oil or some sort of harmful vegetable oil, soybean oil. It's cheap, but that's also going to cause a lot of inflammation to our cells and our body. And what's sad is, I was just driving in the car, and the American Heart Association talked about how we should all be switching to canola oil and how that's such a heart-healthy fat.
I have to wonder if they actually eat this way.
I don't know. It's so it's such a non-natural fat where these saturated fats are so heat stable. They come from nature that, it's just, you just have to think about, well, how is this made?
Yeah. Okay. But. And then obviously the main fat that we want to avoid is the trans fats.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's getting more mainstream. However, it's a little frustrating that they changed the names of them. So a lot of us are getting smart to stay away from hydrogenated oils, such as in most peanut butters and things like that. But they're changing basically the composition so they can change the name. So there's still hydrogenated oils in there. So you just have to know what to look for those trigger words. If there's something you don't know what it is, probably pass it on by and find something that's, doesn't have those weird names in them that you don't recognize.
Yeah, I've always just thought it was weird that they would take the peanut oil out of the peanuts and then put a different oil in there.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Okay. Yep. So now, and you had a really good section in here about eggs, and I haven't really talked a lot about looking at eggs other than, obviously the closer the animal, the healthier the animal is to, the way it should be, which is they are not vegetarian, and they typically would be roaming around pecking. They wouldn't be these huge animals that we buy at the grocery store now. They'd be these little scrawny little birds running around laying eggs.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about how to get a good egg?
Yeah, and it's really, really tricky because there's so many trigger words out there that marketing has tried to fool us. And a lot of times people see a brown egg and they automatically think that that's a healthier option. And it's not necessarily true. Brown eggs are no higher quality than white. The only difference is the hen that laid the egg. Don't focus just on the color of the eggs. And when you see the words cage-free, I was just at I won't say where, but they have all of these cage-free eggs, and the cage-free eggs are brown eggs, and they look so healthy, and people are stocking up on them. However, all it means is that the hens are not in cages, but most of the time they never see daylight. They're just roaming around in these tiny they're squished together in this humongous barn, and they never see light. So you want to look for eggs that you know what they're eating. You want to look at, like you said, vegetarian eggs. They should be roaming around in grass where they're pecking on insects. I'm lucky enough to have a neighbor that sells their own eggs, and they cost the same as the nice eggs at the grocery store. And here I know what they're being fed. And most of the time, it's nice to know where they're coming from. If I had more time, I would probably have my own chickens. But
yeah, that's on my to-do list as well. Once I kind of get back to where I need to be retired and whatnot. Chickens are definitely in my future. But what I do is there's a farm. It's not real close, but I know the farmer. And,
Yeah.
we've had dialogues about how they're raising their animals, and, all of their stuff is pastured. All their cows are grass-fed, grass-finished, and, all their eggs, their chickens are just roaming around. And so it literally is kind of the best that I can get to know. I'm talking to the people that I'm buying this from. And so I would just encourage people. Farmers markets are typically the best place to get your food, because that's what the farmer is feeding their family.
Yes.
And, I don't know what, the head of the Heart Association eats on a day-to-day basis, but if he eats what he's touting, then good for him. But I know what the farmer's eating, and I know how they're raising their chickens. And so I feel a lot better about the eggs. And their eggs look different. It's funny. You can open their egg up, open up another egg, and the yolks look different. They've got a different texture to them, a different color.
Yeah. Yep. They're deeper. They're richer. Some people's, I've seen studies where there's really no different taste and flavor. However, the big difference is, keep this in mind when you're spending money and you look at those expensive eggs and you're like, oh, I don't want to spend the money, because sometimes they can be, $4 more than the cheap eggs. But it takes 11 conventional eggs to get the omega-3s in the amount of one quality, roaming egg, or a quality egg. It takes 11 of them, and it's just like, that's so eye-opening. We spend all this money on trying to get our omegas on and stuff when it really should be coming from our food sources, and that's just one way to really spend quality money. And what I find is funny is people go to Starbucks and spend $4 or $5 on a coffee drink that's really doing nothing for them, when a whole carton of eggs that costs $4 or $5 they gawk at.
Yeah, it is a little sad, but I mean, I think that's just the consumerism and just not really taking the time. And I would put it as far as to say, you're going to spend a lot more on medical bills, having toes and limbs cut off, if you're not doing the right things to take care of yourself. then you will, just right now taking a little bit of investment into the food that you're putting into your body.
Yes.
So now, I've already told you that the etouffee was brilliant, and I can see chicken wings and those nachos as tailgate favorites for me. So I might actually make it through a football season and stay in ketosis.
Too funny.
But what are some of your favorite recipes in this book?
I would say that the Bananas Foster for two, that was always Bananas Foster. I have some really good memories of eating that at my on my honeymoon at this amazing restaurant. And so being able to recreate that is one of my favorites. My husband's favorite is the deconstructed bacon cheeseburger pizza.
Okay.
That's, he loves bacon on this pizza, so that's his favorite. My kids' favorite, they love the pizza waffles. Gosh, there's so many. They're so hard to choose from.
It's all your babies.
I know, right? But I do love I'm not even a big chicken person, but I love the chicken Parmesan mini meatloaves. I love chicken parm, and making it into meatloaf was one of my favorites. And I grew up on barbecued pulled pork, and so I have a barbecued pulled pork sandwich in there that I really, really love.
Well, I'm looking forward to making the cheesy biscuits one morning for my wife, and when I'm cooking her breakfast, and just seeing what she looks at and like, why are you eating that? Kind of look on her face. But so I'm really excited about this book. Like I said, it's pretty special, and the recipes in here are awesome. If you've wanted to have some comfort foods in your life, but you just kind of feel like you can't indulge, this is the perfect way to do it with this cookbook. It's called Keto Comfort Foods. And so, Maria, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, learn more about the book, where would you like for me to send them?
Well, I do have a website with a lot of free recipes and information, if that's where you want to start, and that's mariamindbodyhealth.com. Otherwise, I have a Facebook group at Keto Adapted, where a lot of people like to, post recipes that they tried, or, tips and tricks that way. but otherwise I'm on Instagram if you're there at Maria Emmerich. But, you can pretty much find me anywhere. If you search, Keto Comfort Foods, I'll pop up somewhere.
Okay. Well, this is episode 256. So you can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/256. And you can find the full show notes there with links to everything that Maria mentioned. So again, Maria, thank you so much for the opportunity to review this book, to cook from this book, and I'm going to enjoy it for years to come. So thank you so much for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I promised you at the beginning of this episode that I would give you the details on how you can win a free copy of this cookbook that we talked about today. And like I said, it's got some of the best recipes that, again, for foods that I never thought I'd get an opportunity to eat while I was still in ketosis. So I'm pretty excited about this. And if you're interested in eating slightly low carb or even going into ketosis, I think this is going to be an excellent book for you to have for resources that you can learn a little bit about ketosis, but also have these great recipes. And they're all awesome. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/Maria. Okay. 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/Maria. And on there, you're going to find a link, and that link is going to take you to a Facebook post on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast page. And what I want you to do from there is I want you to tag at least one of your friends that you think might be interested in learning more about ketosis or interested in the cookbook. And I want you to tag them, and then I want you to share that to your timeline. And so what I'm going to do is basically leave this open for 1 week from today. So basically, the episode's going to release today on a Friday. Next Friday, I'm going to look at all the shares, and again, you have to have tagged at least one of your friends, and I'll look at all the shares, and I'm going to randomly select someone, and Maria's going to send you a new copy of her cookbook, Keto Comfort Foods cookbook. So again, pretty excited about this. I know you will enjoy the book. So go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/Maria, find the link to the Facebook page post, and then just tag someone and share it. Thank you. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Dr. Carl Knopf, and we discuss his book, Stretching for 50 Plus. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.